Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Altasea. Thank you for being here. Those of you in the back, come on down, grab a chair. It's going to fill up here. I know by 10:45, 11, it ends up being totally full, so you are the early birds. You get the benefit of my great remarks. I'm Terry Tamminen. Thank you, Bruce. That makes sure everybody can hear me. That proves it. I'm Terry Tamminen, the president and CEO here. I want to recognize our amazing team. Everybody in these blue T-shirts that you can see here is part of the, there, right over there, there's Michelle showing you our swag table. And so please give them all a great big round of applause. And I particularly want to recognize our volunteers, our ocean ambassadors, because unlike those of us that are on the staff, they do this for free out of love for us and the blue economy and the ocean. So please give our wonderful ocean ambassadors a great big round of applause. Thank you all for being here. I'll tell you a little bit about Altasea before we start our program for those that may not know. But first of all, let's acknowledge that we are sitting and standing and having this event today on the territorial lands of the Tongva, the Chumash, and the Gabrielino, and some of their exhibits are over here on my left, your right. So we offer you a chance to go over and take a look. I think there's a QR code there where you can learn more about the history of this place before there was a port. And of course, those cultures and those people are still here today. Unfortunately, our culture bearer, Tina Calderon, who usually does the land acknowledgement, couldn't be here today, so you have me instead, but she's much better at it. I also wanted to acknowledge, I think our State Senator Rosalicia Ochoa Bogue is here. Is she here? Senator Bogue? No? Okay. Maybe coming later on. Well, first of all, just a quick note about Altasea. So what is Altasea? Well, we are a nonprofit that was set up about 10, 12 years ago, and one of the founders, Jenny Crusoe, is standing right in the back there. Wave, Jenny. She's our trustee, our COO, our everything, our Swiss Army knife around here, keeps us all on track, building out the blue economy, the great visionary. And so she can tell you so much more about this, but I'll just give you the brief introduction. So Altasea was created to take over these 100 and now 20-year-old warehouses and turn them into a modern blue economy hub. And so what does that mean? Well, first of all, for education. We have thousands of school kids who come through here on field trips from K through 12, learning about the ocean, learning that this is an ocean planet. 70% of the planet is covered by ocean, right? So that's very important for people to understand and understand our impacts on it, but also how we can use it sustainably. That's what the blue economy is all about. So then we have a home here for the researchers that are understanding the blue economy, whether that's in clean energy or food production or other things from the ocean, and then turning some of that into companies that can provide those services to all of us. And of course, all of those companies need workers, trained workers. So we have a workforce development program in partnership with 15 community colleges. So a young person can come out of high school, go to a community college, get their 2-year associate's degree, and then take some classes at the same time where you come out with a certificate in aquaculture, where you can get a great job going on a boat to go farming in the open ocean, or other kinds of aquaculture where you can get a certificate in hydrogen in the maritime economy right here at LA Harbor College, or a certificate in underwater robotics, and more coming. So we're helping to train that workforce. And when we talk about the blue economy, it is things like aquaculture, like growing kelp or other seaweed in the open ocean, and then harvesting food and fuel and pharmaceuticals and just an amazing array of things that can come from seaweed. We also do things like renewable energy. We have a company out here called EcoWave that has floats in the water that float up and down and generate electricity and send that back to the grid. That's a big future here. We have many companies now in California that are interested in building wave and tidal energy here in the state, so adding to our clean energy. By the way, I should mention that our renovated warehouses here are powered by 2.2 megawatts of solar, which is enough to power 700 homes. So we're sending more energy back to the grid than we're using every day. And with wave energy, we'll be sending back even more. And then things like underwater robotics. We're also very involved in decarbonizing the port. So a lot of the activities you see around here that are using diesel generators or diesel-powered equipment to move containers, all of that can be electrified, and we're working busily on that, including with hydrogen as a method of electrifying. And we've got a hydrogen exhibit back there that shows how hydrogen is used in cars today and trucks, but then how that technology will be adopted to the maritime economy. So anything to do with the blue or ocean economy has a home here in education, workforce training, and business development. And I want to also recognize our other partners here from the tables that are behind you here. We hope that you'll spend some time with them today if you haven't already, and learn about some of our other nonprofits and partners. And then lastly, before I kick off the program, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, as a nonprofit, we could use your help. And I see many of you are wearing the swag, but right over there, Michelle, raise your hand and wave. Michelle will be very happy to sell you a onesie for your newborn. Yep, right there. Or a great t-shirt or a great new hoodie. We've got hoodies. I hadn't seen those until this morning. These are beautiful. Zipper or unzipper. So there's all kinds of great swag that you can get and use that to help support the cause or become a member. Or we have volunteers and internship opportunities. So take a look at those tables as well. So thank you all for coming, and without further ado, I want to introduce Bradley Bartz, who's a clean energy entrepreneur and the founder of ABC Solar, which is a solar and battery engineering company that was established 25, now 26 years ago. Brad's career spans decades of pioneering work in technology and clean energy, from the earliest commercial internet services to new models for emergency power and community sustainability, to mobile and floating energy systems. I want to hear more about that. Most recently, Brad set up his R&D lab right here at Altasea, and he frequently demonstrates to our students, remember those field trips I mentioned, how solar and battery system works, how those systems work through very hands-on prototypes, some of which I think he's going to show you today. Yes. So Bradley, come on up. Give him a great big hand.
Hey, thank you, Terry. Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for coming today. I am Brad Bartz, and I founded ABC Solar in the year 2000 after living in Japan for 10 years and starting one of the first internet companies there. And today we're going to just take a few moments to show you what I teach the kids that are coming through here. It really is the highlight of being here at the Altasea facility. And then also a personal thank you to Terry. Many of you guys don't know, but he was responsible for the Million Roofs program here in the state of California, and one of the reasons that I started my business. And it's Terry, you run a great shop here, and with Jenny and all the rest of the management staff, you have made my little company feel very comfortable. And a special thanks out to Frankie and Walter and Andre and Trish and Robin and all the other folks that are working hard to make this a great facility. So a big hand to you guys. Thank you so much. So today we're going to talk about quantized transfer of energy. So at the end of the day, I didn't realize that solar energy really is small as you could possibly imagine. And so when we have the students coming through here, I have the opportunity to show them what a multimeter does, and we'll test these solar panels here inside and then go outside. And we have a real hands-on and interactive approach to what we do. By the way, this represents a photon. So, as Terry mentioned, there's a couple of megawatts of solar on this roof. And the way solar energy works is for this installation, it's connected directly to the grid, but electricity is like water, it flows to the first point of use. So during the day, everything in this building is powered by the solar that is on this roof. So you guys are off grid right now and completely run by the sun. It's battery systems that come in and take over for the evening that would then transfer that power into use during the evening. And it's exciting for me. The next building, 57, where our offices are, does not have solar yet, and we're hoping to do something with the solar panels so that they're helping to power the activities more directly here and to be involved with charging electric boats that are running throughout the harbor. So with the kids, I have a lot of fun trying to teach them very obtuse concepts. And one of them is from Max Planck in 1900, who came up with the Planck constant. And it is a definition of the energy value of a photon. And so this is a photon. A photon is this small, according to Max Planck. And what they did, or what he did back then, was to test through mathematics what number is going to work that would allow unified theory to be defined and photovoltaics, actually. So I asked the kids, how many of you all have heard of Albert Einstein? Just come on, pretend you're kids. There we go, all of you. And so in my mind, scientists stand on the shoulders of others as they develop their new technology. And for Einstein, it's the same thing. He stood on Max Planck's shoulders and other scientists, and Einstein won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1904 for the photoelectric effect. And what he described was a photon can hit a metal substrate and knock the electron out. And we call it a microscopic fist fight. So for me, with the kids, I tell them that Einstein is walking the plank. Arrgh. So like I said, a photon is extremely small. And if we take the relative size of the photon to one of these solar cells, that solar cell would be the size of this building. And what Einstein, his hypothesis is that the photon in a stream will hit the metal and excite the electron, and the electron gets knocked out. So one of the things I do with the kids is I'll throw a photon out into the audience, and sometimes the kids will get excited, and that's what Einstein was teaching us, is the photons get the electrons excited, and they come out of the solar panel and travel along the wires that are in the solar panel. So I also asked the kids, how do we make solar panels and solar cells, and how many of you all like chocolate milk? So when you're making chocolate milk, you've got your glass of milk and you pour the syrup in it. What happens to the syrup? Does it stay on the top? No, it goes down to the bottom. And solar cells are made in a similar fashion, where they heat pure silica or sand to roughly 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. And through a crystallization process, it will grow up a tube, and gravity, as well as the crystallization process, will force the debris to fall down. And at the very top of that crystallization process are pure solar cells. And these little guys are sliced off at the very top, and that is what's generating our power and the solar energy. So remember chocolate milk when you think about solar energy. So one of the interesting things that I learned about solar power and solar cells as I started to study this business, and now that I'm helping to teach it here, I keep learning more and more as a teacher of solar energy, is every solar cell, no matter its size, produces about 0.6 volts. So your calculator could have a solar cell of this size, and it's 0.6 volts. These solar cells here are 0.6 volts. There's 36 of them, and it outputs approximately 25 volts from that solar cell. And if the larger the solar cell, the more power it's generating. And this is where I will teach the kids Ohm's law. Can you guys say Ohm? Thank you. Good interaction here. Better than a lot of the kids, I tell you. And so Ohm's law we use every day in our solar energy practice, where it's watts equals volts times amps. And so I'm able to teach the kids and encourage them that math is very important. And I tell them the story about my daughter Marie, who in 7th grade came to us and came to me and said, Daddy, I got a B on my algebra test. And I said, oh, that's great. And she said, Dad, what's wrong? I got a B. I said, well, you're a smart kid. So that just means you didn't study and you just showed up and took the test. So I made a deal with her. I said, if you get A's in math, I won't bother you about any subject. You can do anything. And from that moment on, she got straight A's in math, won a statistics award in high school, and then ended up getting into Berkeley. And now she's living her dream working at Pixar. And the latest movie, Hopper, got to give a plug, is part of her work product. So one of the things that has been so enlightening and exciting for us here at Altasea for ABC Solar is teaching the kids. So last session, the staff here asked me to help develop a curriculum for solar energy for K through 6th grade. And I have been writing the Solar Bible for the last many years. I'm on my 17th edition. And so I put together a curriculum for K through 6, about 900 pages of teaching text. And this session we have 2 interns, one from USC and one from SDSU, who are helping format and edit and to really fine-tune all the work that we put in to create a curriculum for teaching solar energy. And it's fun that they're having fun. I gave them a red pen so that they can cross the heck out of it, which is what's needed. And they're doing a terrific job. And I'm excited to have the interns involved. And I'll be telling you a little bit more about what the next group of interns will be doing with us. Now, as some of you may know, there was a landslide in Palos Verdes a couple years ago. And about 300 homes lost all of their Edison power and their natural gas. And the landslide was really a traumatic thing for the community. One of my clients called me from Europe and said, we're turning off the power on Monday. Can you come and help? And so one of the things that we won, it was a great business opportunity, but it was also, I live in Rancho Palos Verdes, this was my community. So we got actively involved in helping people stay in their homes. And one of the projects that we did was the Portuguese Bend Riding Club, where they have about 100 horses, and it's a real cowboy environment. And I must admit that solar installation took the longest ever for my installs, and I think I was just having too much fun with the horses. I wrote a little book called Sterling and the Horses of Portuguese Bend, and about the landslide from the horse perspective, because frankly, the horses were funny as heck. And I really enjoyed working with them because they didn't care that the power went out. They just saw the humans running around with generators and flashlights trying to get things done. And one of the funniest things, at least to me, that happened during the landslide and the Portuguese Bend Riding Club was a very fancy riding operation on the top of the hill, had a little mismatch issue, and 40 very fancy horses moved down into the Portuguese Bend Riding Club with Louis Vuitton bags and really fancy dressage. And so it was this mix where you had the cowboy horses from the riding club coming in with the fancy horses. And it really created an interesting environment for us. The landslide was a lab. And what we learned was we needed to make power move quickly to what the resources are. And we found that these homes from 2,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet all had the same issues. They needed their refrigerators to keep the beer cold. They needed the lights on. And if you didn't have Netflix, they were moving out. So we worked very hard and we learned about what we call rolling batteries or portable batteries to where we were able to take very large portable systems and repower homes very quickly. And in one day, we repowered 6 homes. And I remember the lady of the house said to me, you mean I get to stay here tonight? I said, yes, ma'am, you do. She says, oh, that's great, because I don't really like my sister. So, I mean, adults say the darndest things, I tell you. So an example of one of the systems that we built is, you have the inverters that are converting the solar panels to electricity, and then the batteries that do the storage. And almost to a T, when I turn on a system, the client would overuse the system because they think, I have solar power, so everything's ready to go. And then I got a call one night about 9 o'clock from a client that was 95, and he said, Brad, my power went out. And I said, well, what'd you do? And he said, well, I had 3 of my cooking burners on, and I turned the oven on, and everything went out. And I said, yes, it was your first day. And then he says, what's going to happen? I said, tomorrow morning the sun comes out. It'll recharge everything, turn back on, and you're good to go. And he said, oh, great. Well, hey, why don't you click, that was it. And he just hung right up. So it was really funny. So with rolling battery, we've learned that there's a lot of opportunity to be able to provide services for folks and to generate the batteries, because we needed to get power to where it was needed. So here at Altasea, I run my shop with solar panels that are on my door and a rolling battery, and we run it off the grid. As the tenants move in, they don't have power because they have to go through permitting and move the wires into their shops. So a couple of the tenants here are using the rolling battery so that they can do their science. And really, one of the exciting things for me to be here at Altasea is the science that's going on, because these smart guys and gals are around here breaking things, and they're making things. And it is always fun to walk around and see what these teams are doing. And what we learned was mobility equals resilience. So if you look at today's electric cars, they are a rolling battery. They're no longer just a vehicle, they're an appliance. And with the proper setup, you can roll your electric car into your home and power your home from it. And it's a new world for understanding how power moves. And at Altasea, like I said, we're using these. At the end, at berth 60, I built a solar trailer, and that trailer has the ability to push out 125 amps. And one of the events we helped power was the Blue Hour, which is the annual event for fundraising here at Altasea. So the rolling battery, it was nifty because this trailer was sitting over here growing weeds in it, and I asked the owner, I says, hey, can I get that trailer and rebuild it? So I took out the old technology, which had a big old diesel generator, old lead acid batteries with about 20 kilowatt hours, dropped in new LFP, which is lithium iron phosphate batteries, and increased the storage to 180 kilowatt hours and added today's modern inverters. And this is a monster that will run rock concerts and festivals and whatever it may be. And again, it's kind of the top end of our rolling battery efforts. I know it's a boring speech. So sorry. I'm trying, puppy. And off of rolling battery, being here at Altasea, I'm inspired by the sea. And one of the reasons that I was allowed to come and rent is I have a hobby project for converting old diesel boats into electric boats. And it's an expensive exercise, so we're slow at getting it done. But floating battery is what we're looking at for here, because we think that there needs to be a transition between the electric boat adoption and the charging infrastructure, which is not here. So with a floating battery concept, we can put a 0.5 megawatt of solar batteries and be able to charge, hopefully here at 57 in an off-grid environment. And then these floating battery systems could tool around the harbor and charge boats in their slips. And we hope to have a prototype available for the Olympics, because if you've seen some of the new boating events, they have a lot of robots running around in the ocean here, and they all need charging. So the other thing is that I've learned is that, or I'm excited to tell you, last month I was officially granted a patent for a project I called FRED, the First Responder Ember Drone. And its whole mission is for a drone to carry and loft a fire netting to be able to stand still in front of a burning palm tree with 50-mile-an-hour winds and capture the embers. And when I first had the epiphany, I had clients in Malibu after the Woolsey fire, and I was up at one of their homes to design a new solar battery system for them. And I noticed that the storyboard was very unique in that the old storyboard for describing a house was just sticks in the air with a rough shape. Today they build it with an orange mesh so you can see the actual shape of the building that they're going to build. And as I was flying my drone, I kept looking at that orange netting, kept knowing where I was in the world, where this is a high wind area, and I put the two together. And I remember telling my business partner in Australia this idea, and he said, "Brad, never tell anybody this idea. You're crazy." And that's when I knew I was right. And so Fred's idea, as we're trying to show here, is the drones will be able to hold the net and capture the embers. We learned from the Paradise Fire that the embers can travel 4 miles from the fire source to be able to start new fires and continue the conflagration. And the idea is Fred would start downwind at the lowest point where the embers are and march just up until where the fire guys are doing the actual fighting of the fires, where they're doing the actual work. And I'm excited to look around Altasea to see some of the pollution capturing drones. The drones you see over here to my right and your left are from Bob Bloomfield of Ocean Trust, I think it is, Exploration Trust. And they discovered the Titanic using these underwater drones. And there's another company back in the back that is making remote control drones that will go around the harbor and pick up garbage. So right here in Altasea, at my now fingertips, are some of the tools that we'll need to prove this vision. And we see the drones dropping from C-17s into fire zones that are remote and being able to help stop the wildfires. And we look at the Texas or some of the prairie fires, I imagine a line of drones that are ballast mounted to fire trucks to be able to stop what's going on and hopefully help stop these fires. So wildfires, landslides, they taught me that, well, let's see, firefighters can't be everywhere. And so with today's technology, we hope to be able to be part of the team that helps stop these fires. So we have learned through the landslide, through fires, that power must move. So we look at our rolling battery, our floating batteries, and now flying batteries with Fred. Power must move. So let's build what comes next. Let's do it here. Thank you. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer questions. So the question is, how will the drone tech handle the heat? And it's a great question because when you first think of Fred, you think of Fred going into the fire tornado zone. But really, Fred's job is to be downwind a couple of miles from a fire in high winds and march towards it. And the netting, I'm looking at a Kevlar netting that can handle the fire and the ember capture. And there is still a lot of science to do before we get there. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hello. Yes, I had a question. I love I think you said lithium iron phosphate.
Yeah.
Is that chemistry inherently more stable or less prone to runaway fires?
And it's a great question. So LFP is a much safer battery chemistry, and it is meant to, or it has developed itself as being less prone to thermal runaway. And when we do permitting in Los Angeles and Los Angeles County, they have extremely strict rules on how we install battery systems. And for me, I've been installing batteries for a long time. We did lithium ion also, and I feel much safer with the LFP technology. And I think that battery safety is one of the key categories for making things safer for all of us.
Brad, can you talk about the flexible panel versus the rigid ones we're more familiar with?
Yes. So the flexible panels are, for me, a terrific way to repower boats and for hobbies. And it is identical to the same technology. It's just using a new form factor. So it's light, and with these little ringlets, you can mount them very quickly. The difference with, when we're installing them on a roof with a traditional solar panel is it is a glass plate with a frame, and it's designed for hailstones and other things that are hitting it. And when you're installing on a roof, you're designing for the worst wind that has occurred in that area. We designed for one home in Rancho Palos Verdes that was actually hit by a tornado. And so we had to design for 120 mile an hour winds. And it basically meant more metal to hold them down. So what we see with the technology is it's moving fast. You'll also see that windows in the future will be deployed where even though it's clear, it still has a solar material and still is generating energy. So I expect the high rises of the future to be contributing to more energy.
You mentioned that firefighters can't be anywhere, but you'll have the technology. Who is going to take care of the robots, if you will, while they're downwind or whatever they're doing?
So the questions about how do you control in situ, in the situation, the robots or the flying drones with the firefighters. So one of the things built into the drone will be communication not only to the ground, but to satellites such as NASA's Fire satellite to be able to contribute. And ultimately, before we could deploy in fire zones, it's having that control to the fire zone, because at the end of the day, having as a volunteer firefighter fought fires before, it's hell. And we don't want to interrupt that at all. So there's a lot of work to be done in that, to say the least. Other questions? Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. Brad, thank you very much. And I want to just say here in front of all these witnesses, many people here know that my wife and I recently moved to Pedro. We bought a house actually 5 months ago this week, and moved in, got all the little renovations done, found the roof leaked. So right now, I would like to ask you to come over this week or as soon as possible and tell me how we can install solar and as much battery as possible to power this house.
Hey. Thank you, Terry.
And it will be an interesting challenge, and this kind of gets into some of the other things you were talking about, because it's got a Spanish tile roof, so, not just the easy thing where you can nail the solar panels up there, and I know there's technology to work around that kind of roof, and make it look great, so we're going to have you come and do that. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. Once again, let me encourage you and urge you to visit our other tables, our other partners here, and, of course, to go check out Michelle. Michelle, wave your hand there with the swag, the membership, with the volunteer opportunities, the intern opportunities, if you'd like. And make sure to put on your calendars April 18th, where the Ocean Exploration Trust, which is indeed what you see over here, Bob Ballard, who found the Titanic and had all kinds of other amazing scientific discoveries. Those are some of his older drones and robots, but the Ocean Exploration Trust will be presenting, and that will be, I think, in berth, yeah, right here in berth 58. We're going to do it here again. So mark your calendars for April 18th, and again, thank you all for coming. Enjoy the rest of the day.